Nick, are there other examples that either you know firsthand or you've heard from users and clients, like success stories like Curtis just shared, using your tool to test something, hypothesize, fix, and then the end result was exactly what they were looking to do?
Yeah, I did some research. We've got some good case studies on our site. We've kind of just published recently, actually. We've been making a big push for getting customer case studies. But I had a look through a presentation I did actually a little while ago about some kind of positives and negatives, or common things or themes that we see that people are doing that bring about positive results. So a few of these I thought I'd bring up and mention, and Curtis can see whether he's seen the same kind of things. With some of the testing that we've seen, page title meta description testing is a common thing that people test across or with our tool. And interestingly, I'm sure you both know about Google rewriting page titles quite a lot and it getting perhaps more common. We found that common tests that people do that get positive results around are, and I've got a theory to go alongside this, more shorter and simpler page titles. You see a common result of leading to positive results. And my theory around this is that if you use a shorter, really specific page title, Google is more likely to rewrite it, which actually, as we've seen in testing, brings around more positive results. Whereas if you use a longer page title that's got more longer tail keywords in and is more specific, Google doesn't rewrite that. Whereas if you're using kind of more head tail keywords in your thing, Google will rewrite it for more general search terms.
I didn't tell you this morning, Tom, but that article you gave me to publish just this morning, I rewrote that title because it was too long. It was a super long title. So I did make it shorter and made it, I think, under 60 characters. So we'll see. We'll see how well that does. But
that's where you need to strike, and we need to strike, SEOs and writers, a balance between the human audience and what's going to maybe appeal to an eyeball somewhere online. So, ooh, that sounds interesting. And then what's going to appeal to the search engine algorithms that run our lives and will take over the world someday. So speaking of which,
I got some
we're
more
almost.
Tom, if you want some more.
What's that?
I got some more interesting case studies if you want some more.
Yeah, lay it on us before we have to wrap up here.
These are specific SEO things as well. So shorter page titles was one, but longer H1s we found often bring around positive results. So I think that perhaps tie in together. So a shorter page title, but then a longer H1 included in terms of like perhaps including a secondary or third keyword that you're targeting in the H1.
So you didn't mess with my H1, did you, Curtis?
No, and that one brilliant. And it's long. So I left that alone. So without even realizing it, I'm following Nick's advice here. So this is pretty cool. Okay. We'll see how this article does.
Yeah.
We've I'm sure most of the people who are watching the podcast come across this one because it's tweeted out on the 1st of January every year, but around adding years to articles around, especially if they're review type articles. So this is perhaps around niche sites. So add in 2020 or the month January 2020 to indicate freshness. But to kind of
real quick. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say from just a novice user, when I'm doing searches, I'm always including the date on things like that because I don't want to read like the review for an iPod or an iPhone 7.
Yeah.
So sometimes you get really old results. Anyways, so Go ahead.
I was going to say, to kind of go alongside this, though, if you have got some content that was written, say, in 2020 and it has the year 2020 in it, but you're not going to update it for 2020, just take the year out, because having that year in the page title or meta description or H1 is kind of dating it for you. So by removing it, we've seen some customers that have had some big results, improvements in terms of, not putting people off clicking on it in the SERPs because they think it's older than it actually, than it is.
Yeah. So we've actually, when we auto-populate date now, we've had blogs, and I've got another blog that does really well. They're at about 50 visitors per month. In the healthcare space. And we switched and probably saw a 25% boost when we did this, is we switched from having the published date on the articles to the updated date, latest updated date. And then and we can control the updated date in WordPress, and we are frequently updating the articles. So don't have the original date of when it was published. And that date is the actual like calendar date that shows underneath the H1, and we have the breadcrumbs there and the author information. And then it was like, published on. And instead we got rid of that. And now we have like last updated and the date. And so the reader sees that right away. Google's picking up that date. That's actually the date that is in the header of the HTML. And again, whether or not this was a direct contributor, but like I mentioned, 25% increase since making that change in traffic to the website appears to be working. And then we're revisiting articles too. It's another report you have, Nick, that I use quite frequently. It's called a content decay report, where you see the content that's falling off a SERP. So over time, it's been losing position and therefore losing traffic. And then you're like, okay, well, this is one I need to address because we used to get 500 clicks a month and now we're only getting 200. If we just simply went and added a sentence to this article and changed the date, you might come back up a couple positions and start to get some of that traffic back. It doesn't have to be major overhauls sometimes to these articles. So those are great examples.
Yeah.
I got a
You
couple
got
more. Couple more for
one
you.
last one. Yeah.
Internal links. Whenever we've done internal linking and seen internal linking done as a test, it always brings about good results. And the last one I mentioned is video content. So we have made a big effort for the past probably 12, 18 months for all our blog posts that are performing well, of creating a video to go alongside them and embedding that video in the blog post. And that has always led to positive results as well. The page itself performing better, but then also the video doing, publishing on another platform as in YouTube and getting visibility from that too, which has been good.
Those are great ideas. I mean, the LinkedIn or internal links is like one of the easiest things you could do. I know because I do it. When I write my blog post, I'm like, well, I just wrote about this and I just mentioned it. So I'm going to put a link right in the Google Doc. So people like Curtis don't even have to think about it. So make sure you're doing that. And then video is interesting, Curtis, because we're emphasizing video just from, again, the human side of things. It's more immersive. It shows off more personality. There's longer dwell times. So interesting stuff. All right. Before we let you go, so you mentioned you looked into your crystal ball at the beginning of this podcast and you said you can imagine a day and time without the 10 blue links and we're just getting who knows what. But AI, again, will just tell us the answer. Anything else? You said that might take a little longer than people are fearing or expecting. Anything else that you are seeing on the shorter term horizon, Nick?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess things I'm concerned about or interested about are algorithm updates, as we've kind of discussed, and it is AI type stuff at the moment. And so I guess just to kind of perhaps explain a bit more why I think it will be slower to come along than perhaps, the doom mongers are saying in terms of SEO is going to go away or life is going to change completely. I think Google's business model is one in terms of they make the majority of their money from advertising and AdWords and things like that. So they are not going to want to change the search engine result pages massively and all of a sudden all that revenue disappears. So they're going to need time to iterate on their business. Search generative experience affects that. But also from what I've read, it's a lot more expensive for, the computing and compute power to generate these SG answers for people compared to search results, which when you're looking at just one particular answer is, decimals of a cent. But when you roll that up to how many search queries are run per hour and per day and so on, those costs compared to just showing us 10 blue links scale up quite quickly. So until that becomes a more affordable thing for Google to be able to do, I think that's why it's perhaps a longer term thing to be interested in and worried about than thinking away my business is going to go away overnight. I guess I put it back to you two. It'd be interesting to get your take on it and see how you think how quickly things are going to change and how things are going to change.
Give you the layperson's response, and then Curtis, you can wrap up with a more technical view of things. But what you just described, I think is going to be so interesting to watch, Nick, because on the one hand, Google needs to protect its revenue model. On the other hand, somebody is going to try to come along and displace Google, which we thought was never possible at one time, by just giving you the answer, right? I don't want 10 blue links. I just want the answer. And I want the algorithms to find the right answer to it and deliver it to me. This is the way we're just conditioning our lives, right? Everything's on demand. I don't have to wait till 8 o'clock on Tuesday to watch Happy Days. I just go binge the whole series. Everything is like, gimme. So Google is smart, but they are up against, I think, a pretty interesting challenge because there's going to be people who are going to try to change search behavior online. Maybe it'll be Google.